Okay, everybody, it's Wednesday, January 21st. Don't worry, 3i Atlas is not over. It's still our teacher, and it's doing something utterly incredible right now. But what happened, and what I'm going to share today, is truly iconoclastic for the great religions of the world. I was woken up at about 1:30 in the morning, and I can't sleep, and I hear the voice, and it says to check Nazareth. Of course, Jesus of Nazareth, a lot of people don't know what that means, but Nazareth is the place where the archangel Gabriel, and note it's Gabriel, and Gabriel is the angel that appears to the prophet Muhammad on which is the night of power in Islam to start the oration of the Quran. And 3i Atlas will be at closest to Jupiter on the night of power when the angel Gabriel appeared to the prophet of Islam. Now, the Gabriel appears to the Mother Mary at the conception of Christ. Now watch what happens. So the voice tells me to check it, so I check it. And guess what? I go to my angles project, and you can see my blue line, which is my 38, 39 degree to the east, the rising position, which runs right to the Magdala temple, where Jesus appeared in his resurrected body, and runs right through Nazareth. So this is the location of the Annunciation. So that means Jesus is conceived at Egyptian resurrection angle. Now all of this is happening to me as we started doing the frequencies of the 9 levels of the angels. So what happens is, as we're doing these frequencies, and I've delivered them to everybody in their circle, is your neural pathways and the connections in our nervous system. It tunes us to these positions. So this would mean that Jesus is conceived at this sacred Egyptian angle of resurrection, which we're going to go really deeply into today. But also the angel appears at this angle. And of course this angle also runs through the Zaytun apparition church where the Mother Mary appeared in 1968 for almost 3 years, intermittently, to several million people saw her over those years in a fully luminous body that was photographed and witnessed, with documented numerous healings and proven not to be a hologram of any type. So we have a resurrected person appearing here, and I should probably do a cutaway in a minute so people who don't know about the Zaytun apparitions can see what those images look like. But now we have, this is just not surprising, it isn't, that of course Nazareth, the place of the conception of Christ and the appearance of the angel Gabriel, which then leads to the Magdala temple at the Sea of Galilee. This is just incredible. It's just incredible, because this angle is an Egyptian angle of resurrection. So what does this mean? The fact that this is all winding up. So Jesus is conceived at 39 degrees, let's just call it, round it off, and he's born at 26 degrees and baptized at 26 degrees in the sun and the planets and the ecliptic and the stars all rise in the east, and then they set in the west. And remember, when I go 39 degrees to the west, what happens, just as a recap? 39 degrees to the west, of course I have a lot of lines here, you just got to follow this blue one, leads directly to the location of where Mary Magdalene's boat stopped in France, and where her and the followers and the children got out and began the establishment of Christianity in this Roman-occupied territory of Gaul, which was not France yet, of course, because France wouldn't appear for another 500 years. And when I continued that 39-degree line all the way around the Earth, it intersects at the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico, and runs right through the site of where Juan Diego, in the year, here it is, I know this takes a while, on December 12, 1531, which was winter solstice at that time on the calendar, where the resurrected Mother of Christ appears at Tepeyac Hill and imprints herself on the cactus fiber cloth. So 39 degrees setting to the west, give or take a tiny shaving, and then also 39 degrees to the east. So now we have an angel. This is our first angel, everybody. We've got the angel Gabriel and the conception of Christ. So how could Christ be conceived at 39 degrees and be born at 26 degrees and baptized at 26 degrees, both of which are Egyptian angles to the god Osiris and Isis? How could that be? I mean, this is enormous what this will lead us into. So when we go, just to stop share, go to the I want to go to the Zaytun gallery because a lot of people have not seen this, where we see the resurrected Mother of Christ appearing. This is the website, zaytun/eg.org, and there's all of these articles and recordings, and like here's scraps of photos on the Mother Mary in the newspapers, appearing above the church in her body of light. Now, here's a great example of one here, which have all been archived for the papers, and again, millions of people saw her, so it was really indisputed. Like, here's some pictures of people assembled and newspaper clippings here of the people assembled at night, all watching her. In fact, somewhere in here there is also a New York Times article where in 1968 people reported to the New York Times, and the story made the New York Times. So there were, what's really interesting about this, and we're going to go way deeper into this later on, is why the apparitions of the Mother are fully visible to everyone in Egypt. But the other places around the world where she appeared, the apparitions were private, such as Garabandal and Spain, and Lourdes, and Medjugorje. There's a lot of different sites where Marian apparitions have occurred in the past 2,000 year period. But for some reason, again, at resurrection angle, she is fully visible to others. So with understanding the frequencies we're doing is opening up this connection, we can see how deep this is going to get, because it was actually 3i Atlas on, so let's go to my article, Did Jesus Ascend to the star Sirius on his day of ascension and birth connection? Christianity's great secret revealed. So if I go to the end of my article here, just to start, on Orthodox Christmas this year, 3i Atlas, you can see between 39 and 40 degrees on the, remember, Orthodox Christmas for the Eastern Bloc, which includes Russia, Egypt, and a lot of Eastern Bloc countries. For Egypt, it's the 8th, going into the 9th, and for most of the Eastern Bloc, it's the 7th. So it's passing between this same angle, 3i Atlas, measured off its baseline. My accuracy here is 99% because, of course, I'm using the SkyLive, which accesses NASA, JPL, and extremely precise, solar system data. So there's no such thing as 100% accuracy. In fact, you're going to learn, as we will see, that the positions of our stars are moving all the time over great cycles in history. So for people who don't know what the Ascension of Christ is it's no one would have thought that. So 40 days after Easter, sometimes it's actually 39 days, is the period of time that Jesus appeared in his resurrected body to not only his apostles, but hundreds of people, actually. There's one case where 500 people are seeing him all at once. So that means he was fully visible in these appearances. And they're documented throughout the Gospels. And at the end of the 40 days, he ascends. So the question is, of course, what does 40 days mean? Because during a period of 40 days in the 360-degree revolution of our planet through spring, summer, winter, and fall, and one orbit around the sun of 360 degrees, the Earth will transit in 40 days 39 degrees and change. But it's actually 42 to 43 days after his crucifixion that he ascends. So you have two windows of time to work with, which is more than symbolic. So you have, on the ecliptic plane of the solar system, you have the Earth going around the sun 39 degrees, which is our magic number, in the time period. But at the same time, something else is happening at 39 degrees. And we're going to see what that is. So when you look at, again, the angle of a star, this is my diagram here of an observer. If you're sitting at the Great Pyramid on the north side of the pyramid looking to the southern skies. So right now, I'm actually looking to the southern skies. And this happens at the same angle all year around, but at different times of the day. That a star will rise in the east and reach its upper culmination angle, as seen here in the diagram, and then set in the west, rising in the east, setting in the west. It's very, very, very simple. So what this means is, for example, in the winter time, the stars of Orion and Sirius will be visible in the night sky, and they'll reach, depending on how far north and how far near the equator you are and how far south, the angle of inclination changes. So it depends where you are, and it depends what year it is. So it's never staying the same. It's moving all the time due to our motion through the 26,000 year precession of the equinoxes, and also our migration around the galactic center, which causes the stars to appear to move. So the accuracy of these clocks is very good for thousands of years, and it's been 2,000 years plus since the time of Christ. So this means, again, when you look at this depiction on papyrus of the god Osiris laying at approximately 39 degrees, and his erection at Great Pyramid angle, which is the complementary angle, at 51 degrees and change, right? So it's 38 to 39 degrees, 51 degrees. But that means we're looking for what stars culminate at those angles at the time of the Egyptians versus we're going to go to the time of Christ, where it changes just a little bit over the 1,000-year cycle. But you're going to see it's pointing to the same positions. So we can see from the last presentation I gave that the secret to Three-Eye Atlas was pointing to the positions of the capstone of the Great Pyramid at the time of Christ in the missing space where Jesus declares that he is the missing headstone, which is the 3 stars of Orion assembled in the missing space of the capstone of the Great Pyramid at the time of his birth. But now we're at the Annunciation. And the Annunciation, this is Da Vinci's painting of the Annunciation of the angel Gabriel, at 39 degrees from the Great Pyramid to the eastern rising position. And we see the perfection of how consistent this is, which should really turn Christianity on its ear, because it means that what's happening in the heavens is ordained as if you had vision from God above looking down at the scene and knowing where the positions of the stars and the planets are. And it's consistent, consistent, consistent. In fact, we can see here, this is really interesting, that the Annunciation on the Catholic calendar is the 25th of March. Which, again, the Catholics have very old dates for their going back to the time of Christ. So we're mid-upper March, and notice this for the Annunciation, which is the conception of Christ. He's being conceived in the womb, because when the angel Gabriel announces the birth of Christ, the angel tells Mary, that which is conceived in your womb is of the Holy Spirit. Conceived. So he's conceived at 39 degrees, give or take, right? Remember, because the time of Christ and the time of Moses and going back, you're going to see those angles actually are migrating just a tiny bit, just a little bit. So within a tiny bit of tolerance, you're going to see how accurate this is. But notice it's March 25th. And notice that when Three-Eye Atlas will be at Jupiter, it's March 16th, which is the same window of time for the Night of Power in Islam, when the Archangel Gabriel appears to the Prophet of Islam to begin the oration of the Quran. So we're in the same window for the same angel, which is really, really incredible. Because we're going to be measuring as we go along with Three-Eye Atlas as our teacher, as it starts approaching Jupiter, and some very huge stories are developing on Three-Eye Atlas about what it's really going to do, and what is really going to happen at Jupiter. So with this, again, you can see how consistent this is. So in fact, the conception of Jesus' birth to his mother by the angel Gabriel occurs at Nazareth along the same angles to angels within 38 to 39 degrees from the Great Pyramid. And which means Jesus, Isa, Yeshua is conceived at an Egyptian resurrection angle. I mean, this is just incredible. And of course, that angle continues to the newly discovered Magdala synagogue found in the hometown of Mary Magdalene, where in this position we now know, which is here, where Jesus appears 3 times in his resurrected body, this temple was actually built at least 500 years before the time of Christ. Remember, 500 years won't change these angles very much. It's tiny shavings is what it changes. So again, this is going to get more mysterious than you can imagine, because it's starting to look to me like a house of mirrors. And the house of mirrors is greater than as above, so below. It's more mysterious than you can possibly imagine. And so for people who don't know, The Smithsonian reported this. This was reported December 14th, 2021, which is when the second temple at the Migdal site was found on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. And this article illustrates again that, you know, the hometown of Mary Magdalene obviously was not the former prostitute and the repentant prostitute, and the church corrected its position on this in 1968, realizing there's no way Mary Magdalene was the former repentant prostitute. So she was from a very wealthy family. And this temple, of course, I'm going to have to stop share here a second, because I'm going to have to go back just to recapture my angles project here. Go back to my angles before we move on here. So, I mean, what we know about the early priests in Egypt and the early Jewish priests is they had to know they had to understand the heavens. They had to understand where everything was operating at. And you're going to see in new breakthroughs that I've made, that I have lined up for the inner circle, what the real secrets to other pyramids in Giza and also different parts of Egypt were pointing to in the heavens. Because the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the pyramid texts are not, they don't reveal all the secrets in a form of writing. They're more hymns and prayers to the deceased and making their way to paradise. So here we go. So remember, in this matrix here, which I've shown before we go back to my article, shows the connection to, again, this yellow line here is my 30, I'll just call it the 39 degree line to the east, rising position to the northeast. So the north latitude lines are east-west facing, so they're facing true east-west. And your north longitude lines are facing true north, meaning aligned to the pole star, not to the magnetic field of the Earth, which means they survive the test of time. So this 39 degree line here, now we know, runs through the conception place of Christ and the Annunciation at Nazareth, connecting to the Sea of Galilee. And this line going south connects to the angle of the Dendera temple for Isis and Hathor in Dendera. And you can see how I meet that angle almost perfectly on the runway coming out of the temple. Which, here's the runway all the way. The runway goes all the way along here. And of course, this photograph from space is not directly overhead perfectly. If it was, this yellow line which connects the two temples would be perfectly aligned to the Magdala temple. So it shows that this is all designed from space, from above. So the gods in the heavens are somehow orchestrating this from above. And I highly doubt the Mother Mary of Christ knew any of this when she was receiving the Archangel Gabriel to announce the conception of Christ in her womb at Egyptian resurrection angle to the east of the Great Pyramid. So that's happening, I mean, for the first time in history. I mean, this should be seen by millions of Christians, but they just won't. There's just no way to get them to open their eyes to this, including the churches need to understand this. So when let me stop share here again and come back to where I am. we see the bird's eye view. Go back to my article. Oh my God, I want to show you this too. There's a lot that's happened. I mean, I'm just at the tip of the iceberg. But to me, this is, I mean, how I was guided this morning to check Nazareth. I don't know why I haven't checked Nazareth all this time. And really with the understanding that this is the conception. And it's also marking something much more mysterious. So here we can see the view from the Great Pyramid, the 26 degrees to the birth of Jesus. Remember, the 26 degrees is the angle of ascent inside the Great Pyramid to the Queen and King's Chamber. It's kind of hard to get good illustrations of that. So we come down here, and of course we can see in the book of Acts 1 through 12 actually describes, this is really important, what time of day at 40 days after Easter did Jesus ascend. Was it nighttime? No, it was daytime. So remember what I said, it throughout the year, because if you look to your pole star to the true north, it's there 24 hours a day. And your southern star is there 24 hours a day, all 365 days of the year. They never change. All the constellations, like a globe, are spinning around during the different seasons, the 4 different seasons, winter, spring, summer, and fall, which is why you only see certain stars at nighttime during different seasons. But they all rise and set at different times of the day or night. So the question is, because Jesus ascended in the daylight hours, which is written in the scriptures, and he went up into the clouds, and the word for cloud in Greek is nephele, which resembles Nephilim, meaning the many gods. So did he meet many gods in the sky, Nephilim, or the word nephele in Greek, it is resembling clothed in white, glowing gods or beings. So we know that Jesus ascended in the day. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look for, let me just click on the star Sirius here because I have lots of time. So you can see Sirius has an A star and a B star. It is the brightest star in the night sky. So when I go back to here in my article, I gotta stop share and then share again. This is going to change. I mean, you have to understand, 3i Atlas is pointing the way. So it probably has a far greater mission than we can imagine, because it's perfectly pointing out all of these angles which lead to these dates. So Jesus first ascends at the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. So I have to check at Jerusalem at what angle 40 days after Easter, which is 43 days after his crucifixion. Remember, so 43 days is going to be around 42 degrees. Again, it can be 42 to 43 days because we don't know in exact hours from the time on the cross to the moment of the resurrection, and then 40 days after the resurrection. So I have a window of about 42 to 43 days. And when we calculate the angle, right, of how much time in angles, when in degrees, the Earth was going around the sun, we're going to see the same number. So basically there, again, because there's disputes about whether Jesus was born in 3 BCE, before the Common Era, or 4. And of course, some place him rarely, at 5 BC or 6, and some even place him near the 0 mark, which is the 0 mark, meaning between before the Common Era and after. So it won't matter, because over a few years, the angle will only change so little you won't even perceive it without using a sextant and very precise measurements. So it's really not going to make any difference. So that's why you see option A, crucifixion in 30 of the Common Era, which means he's born in 3 BCE, because he's 33 years old on the cross. And actually trying to find the first Easter was quite a task, because to find the first Easter on the Julian calendar puts the crucifixion on the 7th of April, and Easter April 9th, in 30 of the Common Era. So that's quite a task in itself, because on the lunar calendar for Easter, you're only going to get a true alignment to a star calendar or a true sidereal year very few times in a human lifetime. You'll be lucky to get 2 or 3 accurate Easters, because the lunar calendar, looking for the phase of the moon during the crucifixion and then the resurrection, is going to migrate over time across a star or solar calendar, which means you're not going to see that phase of the moon every Easter. In fact, it's not going to happen for a long time. So to find the original date of Easter allows us to adjust it to the current calendar when the real Easter actually occurred. And the phase of the moon will only match the true date of Easter so many times per lunar calendar cycle over a human lifetime. And it's not very many times. It gets close, and then it goes away, and it gets close, and then it matches. So I've done this work, and it's really complex work. But we can see that the Ascension of Jesus was May 19th in the year 30 of the Common Era on the Julian, see it says Julian calendar here. And Sirius's upper culmination was on that day at 11:17 and 45 seconds Universal Time Code in Jerusalem. It's actually about it's 13:18, so that's 1:38 in the afternoon. Perfect, because he ascended in the daytime. He ascended in the daytime. He did. So that would be, an hour and 38 minutes after lunchtime that Jesus would have ascended up into the clouds, because we know he did in the day. And that's the angle that the star Sirius was at, was equal to the 42 to 43 days of transit. So it actually forms a square. It forms a square. So Sirius is at resurrection angle, but notice it's adjusted. It's not 39 degrees anymore. That's because of the time that has occurred from the time of the great cycles of time, from the time the god Osiris was on the earth. And we can actually measure now when he would have been on the earth. But we can see now this is from Jerusalem, right? So it's culminating at 41.57 degrees south off the south horizon. So if I'm in my back is facing to the north, so I'm in Jerusalem at the Jerusalem temple. It's not going to be any different at Bethlehem. It's just a shaving. I'm just a 39, 40, 41. I'm 2.5 degrees above my 39 degree mark. Maybe like 39, 40, 41, almost 40. Yeah, so 2 to 3 degrees above, which is very little. It's a tiny bit in your observation. So that would mean that Jesus is demonstrating from the time he's on the cross to the time he ascends is equal in angle of transit around the sun to the same angle that the star Sirius is rising off the east and culminating at the moment of his ascension. This is incredible. This is kind of what it looks like. So here's a great model, right, to show. So there's the observer there, and there's your star, right, which is crossing the celestial meridian. And at its altitude, which is its maximum height, you measure that angle. So he's ascending when the star Sirius is at maximum angle, just an hour and a half and a bit after lunchtime. So it's very likely, with an extremely high degree of accuracy, what he was doing. But it's way more mysterious than even this. So now I checked for Sirius up at the Sea of Galilee. So at the Sea of Galilee, as we know, its culmination was less. It's 40 degrees and 40.45 degrees off of the southern horizon. So that's only 1.45 degrees away from 39 degrees. Do you see how close that is? And this again is at the moment of his ascension. And at Nazareth, it's 41.36 degrees. So again, today, if we check the angles today, you'll see that on those locations, it's different. And I'm going to show you how I do that so you can actually see, because we use AI to do the math for us. You just have to, the brilliant thing about AI is you have to know what to ask it. And it's really good at calculating this stuff. So at Nazareth, the culmination angle in at the birth of Christ is 40.6 degrees above the horizon. You see, you're just a shaving away from 39. In fact, you can barely see that change as an observer on the ground of 1 degree. You can just barely see it. So that would mean, again, that when we really see this, that the master star for Jesus' birth, there's two of them, because there is Sirius, and then also at his birth, a different angle, which is pyramid angle, which is the surface of the pyramid. So I'm standing at the north side of the pyramid, and I'm looking up the steepness of the slope of the pyramid at just over 51 degrees, and the 3 stars of Orion are assembling in that space. So that means that both stars are perfected, because we did this in my last presentation. The stars that assemble above the missing capstone of the Great Pyramid are the 3 stars of Orion's belt. They're just above it. They're just above the 3 pyramids. So, but this is going to get way more spellbinding than you think, because it's not as easy as it looks. So when we look at, this is where it gets real. While the star Sirius culminates in the south, 38 to 42 degrees, depending on the time, era, and exact location, we now have to explain the same angle above the east rising angle and west setting angle. So when we go to the Giza Plateau here, you see, I'm going to do this on my Google Earth. I'm actually going to go there. So let me stop share for a second and go to my Earth angles again. This is where it's like a house of mirrors, where the southern is reflected in the northern. And this is where the hyperdimensional solar system starts to appear, which seems to be a reflection in the heavens above as below. So remember, if you're here, and you're above, and you're the star Sirius and Orion's belt, you're culminating down here. at those same angles. But the Archangel Gabriel announcing Jesus' birth, and the Magdala temple, and the Virgin Mary, Mother Mary, appearing at the Church of Zaytun at 39 degrees above the east-west line. So the east-west line is the rising and setting sun at spring and fall equinox. So on your equinox dates, the sun rises perfectly in the east and the west along your north latitude line. So that means if down here, if I'm facing 39 degrees rising above the southern horizon, there's 51 degrees left over to zenith, which is straight above me. Oh, you're not seeing this because I gotta put my share screen up again here. So here we go. So I was using my hands. So there we go. So you see what's happening. So this is 39 degrees above the east-west line. The stars that I'm talking about, Sirius and Orion, are culminating off the south line. So if I'm facing south and I look 39 degrees above south, and there's Sirius culminating 39 to 42 degrees, depending on the time period, and then in the negative space to 90 degrees, from 39 degrees, I have 51 degrees left over, which is the Great Pyramid slope angle is 51 degrees and change, 51 minutes. And all three pyramids, this is where it gets complex, are adjusting their angles slightly because of this migration of what they're tracking over time. So why do I have the same angle to the northeast and setting in the northeast as I do in the southeast and the southwest for my stars? This is where it's like a house of mirrors. In fact, if you've ever played with those origamis and you see, in fact, Jesus said this, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, right? He's actually so aware, because there's no question in my mind that Jesus was a master astronomer. There's no question, because you can see it in his language, and you can see that he would have studied, just like Moses did, all things Egyptian. And only the Egyptian priests and the Jewish priests, who have nearly identical rituals, although we already documented that the sacraments of the church, the bread and the wine, are Osirian in origin. They have no origins in Judaism, because in Judaism you didn't partake of the bread and the wine as the body and the blood of a god, of the God of the Bible. No, you didn't do that. That was only something the Egyptians did. They partook. In fact, the Egyptians made bread in the form of the body of Osiris, literally. And they drank beer, and eventually they converted the ritual to wine and partaking of the bread and the wine as the body and the blood of their God. So Jesus is all the evidence is pointing to him following the harmony of the order of the god Osiris and Isis. So this is what we're seeing. So the mystery now, and remember, this purple line here, which leaves the Great Pyramid at Great Pyramid angle to the east, runs right through the village in Syria, which is where the origin of the Aramaic language he spoke comes from. The Eye of Isa, the village, is at Great Pyramid angle to the Great Pyramid. So that means, where are they pointing to? This is where it's very obvious where they're pointing to, because they're pointing to my model of the invisible hyperdimensional planets of the angels, or the ascended masters and ascended beings. Because we have right here the Archangel Gabriel appearing at 39 degrees to the north of the east-west line. Now, the star Sirius isn't up here. The star Orion isn't up here. In fact, we don't even know what's up here and setting to the west off the north line. But it's a mere opposite. It's like if you're sitting along and you're looking along the east-west axis, like the Great Sphinx is looking into the east to the rising sun. We're going to get into the Sphinx because it has a really deep secret that is not easy to tell. It's not easy to tell because the Sphinx, he or she, because it could be a she, is pointing on a certain date which is going to match. It's going to match my angel. So let's go now. It's really huge. This is really huge. I mean, when you see it all from above the way I can see it, this is really going to change our view of what's really going on with these master beings. And it's very clear to me. We know nothing about Christianity. We know nothing. We're just getting to beginning to understand who Jesus, Isa, Yeshua was. So it's clear because we had an Archangel Gabriel, if you look at my model here, appear at the 39-degree angle to the Mother Mary to announce the conception of Jesus in her womb, Isa in her womb, Yeshua in her womb. However you want to pronounce his name. From the earliest sources, it would be Isus, with a soft S at the end, so which is very much like Isis. So could it be that in my model from Earth that the position of archangels as a planet, as a real planet, is where it coincides? Or could it be the Ascension planet of Jesus? The Ascension planet of Jesus, we've already proven, is at 26 degrees. It's proven. All the math proves that the 26-degree angle where he was born, because he's born at 26 degree, points to planet 139.51, known as thrones in the angelic hierarchy. So we know that. But where the archangel came from, we don't know. But it's likely in the assembly of the upper 9 positions of the angelic hierarchy, because the proof is in the angle. So that means the ecliptic and where the 9 planets of the angels are is a mere opposite. It's mirroring. It's like origami paper when you're folding it in and out and folding it in and out, and you play that game with the origami and you'll see that this universe is, and the 19.5 degrees of Richard Hoagland and the inverse of 19.5 is the 591, is our opposite sides of a mirror. So we're starting to see what the reflection of the hyperdimensional solar system really looks like. We're living in an incredible matrix. It's what it really looks like. And now we can see with a bird's eye view where the angelic positions really, really are. It's just perfect. It's just perfect. There's no way this is an accident. So, again, I'm on my Medium page for people who want to look at this much closer. Again, you can see on Orthodox Christmas, 3i Atlas to Earth was 39, it's right in here, 3940 degrees. Again, my accuracy, it could be anywhere between 38 and 40 degrees here on that date. It could be anywhere in there because you can't see those tiny differences. And on Western Christmas Day, 3i Atlas was demonstrated to be, I have it here, at the surface angle of the Great Pyramid to Earth. So that means we're living in a house of mirrors. It's getting really, really incredible. So where it's all heading is is the big reveal will be at Jupiter. I have so much data on Jupiter. So it's really important for everybody, really work with the frequencies I sent you. And how you do it is you do the 5 minutes of deep breathing. I've been doing deep breathing this whole month for 45 minutes every morning, which is like a huge exercise of this enormous practice of expanding the chest, filling your lungs, expanding the chest, and then slow exhale, slow exhale, slow exhale, inhale. So do that for a few minutes, and then you listen to the frequency track of the planet of the angels. Start with angels, and you work with angels. Like, we're going to be working with angels for 2 straight weeks before we go to archangels. You really want to get these frequencies in your system. What I've been doing is putting the frequencies in my pendant, my jewelry, and a lot of people have been ordering pendants lately, so I've been shipping out a lot of pendants. The other way to do it is for people who own my systems, coils, or wands, or cubes, is to run the frequencies of the angels through your cube, which I've been doing with my cube system placed to my bed, which is why these insights have opened up, why there's a dialogue where I actually hear a voice tell me to check Nazareth, which is funny to me because I should have checked it over a year ago when I knew this. I mean, I couldn't believe that Nazareth was sitting on, I mean, for me, this was huge. I mean, to see, before we wrap up here today, I mean, to see Nazareth on my line, I mean, it's just, what do you say to that? What do you say to that? Like, it's just so perfect. I mean, if these positions were just scattered all over the place, I wouldn't have anything here. None of this would make any sense. So why do angles matter? Notice angles to angels is the same letters with it's kind of like an anagram where you just switch the letters around a little bit and you've got angels from angles. Why do angles matter so much? Because they matter from where you're standing on the earth and what you're looking at in the heavens, rising in the east and setting in the west. Just like in the wintertime, the sun rises at a lower angle and sets at a lower angle in the western hemisphere. And then for this people in the southern hemisphere, it's the opposite. So this, in a way, the southern hemisphere is kind of the mirror opposite to the northern hemisphere because our seasons are flip-flopped. For people in Australia, it's summer right now. So this opposite side of the mirror is part of the revealing of the great mystery. But the great mystery of why the angles match to the star Sirius and Orion's belt, to the hyperdimensional planets in the north rising and setting positions. Ooh, that's really heavy for me to realize. It's really heavy. But I think the voices I've been receiving in meditation that are guiding me to do this since my wife died August 9th, 2021 and gave me the 591 number. And next week we've got huge news on the 591. It's huge. And the article is already part written, but it's not finished yet. So stay on those frequencies. They do attune you. They do attune you. And for people who want pendants vibrated at those frequencies, just go to davidsereda.co. And with that, have a great week, everybody. See you next time.